Welcome to Subway Sports Talk.
Dan, clear of the closing doors, please.
All right, here we go, Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I'm your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into SST on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate you the same. We got an OG crew back in the building today. We got a great trio for y'all to talk about the New York Knicks, to talk about the NFL, specifically the quarterbacks. It's time to take stock of the quarterbacks in the NFL because there's movers and there's shakers. And there's risers and there's fallers seemingly week in, week out. Who better to do it with than the one and only Pat Boyle? Welcome back. It's been a minute since we talked on the SST airwaves, my brother.
It has been a minute, Pete. It has been a couple minutes, and It's great to be back, man. We are heading into the final stretch of the NFL season. Like you said, Knicks heating up. We got a Soto decision. You want to do an hour and a half on Juan Soto,
Let's
like we talked about?
4 hours on Soto.
It's great to be back, bro.
It's so good to be not talking about Juan Soto. And to everyone who doesn't quite understand that, maybe you're not as far down the ether as Patrick Boyle and myself, because when you happen to work at WFAM, you happen to talk a lot of Juan Soto. And Pat, I worked about 5 or 6 shifts in the past 3 weeks here, and every time it's the same story. The host talks to me, "Hey, what are we talking about today? Like, what's hot?" Before they come in. I'm like, like they were trying to do some football. Football's good, but like ended up on Soto again. Hey, I don't really want to talk Soto. And then it's 2 hours of Soto, man. It's just been everywhere, and I don't want to talk about it. So that's it. Cody O'Connor, do you want to talk about it? I don't think so. What's up, Cody?
Can somebody just break it already? Just tell me where he's going, whether it's the Mets, the Yankees, the Sox, or somewhere else. I can't keep going through the same charade every day of seeing somebody break it with a number attached, but it's an unnamed source, and I just keep looking because it's on my algorithm and I can't stop. So I'm over it as well. I hope and pray he's a Met, and I'll leave it at that.
Really quickly?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, what's nightmare snenario? And here we go, talking about Soto. Just one question I want to pose to you.
Nightmare?
To both of you guys, both Mets fans. What's worse? Bob Nightingale reports Soto to the Mets, and it turns out to be wrong. Or you get anybody else that like reports, let's say Soto staying with the Yankees, Mets were unwilling to match final offer. Then what's worse out of that?
The latter.
No, here's the spin cycle. Here's the spin cycle on this one, because Yankees fans, since the get-go of the offseason, have been talking themselves into not paying for him and saying we don't need to pay all this money for a guy who's not a good base runner and fielder. He's not only good at hitting. I don't know why I did a weird baby voice right there, but that's what I've been hearing from the Yankee fans since the offseason started. So if the Yankees do sign him for more money than the Mets were willing to offer, spin zone, the Yankees overpaid and y'all are dumb.
No.
So that's actually not worse. The worst case scenario is Bob Nightingale reporting he's a Met and then he ends up like in Boston or something. But the absolute worst case scenario is him becoming a Dodger. I don't think anybody outside
Philly.
of LA County wants that. Frankly, Philly would suck horribly.
For
However,
us.
I think I'd be more pissed at the Dodgers, because then it's just like, all right, here we go. Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Juan Soto. Who else the frick do you need over there in LA? You're good. You just won. You're going to get this guy now? Shohei. I didn't even say Shohei Ohtani. So, no, I don't want to see the Dodgers. Philly would suck almost just as bad, but those are my 2 least favorite outcomes.
If Steve Cohen really wouldn't match it, it would hit me in a way like a he's not who I thought he was way. And I think he is that. And I don't think there's any world in which he won't match an offer. But that would be true doomsday nightmare for me.
Who do you think you are? I am.
We are.
Anybody get that one? Anybody? I think Pat Smart
Bowling.
got me. Yeah, the bowling guy.
I can't think of his name.
I want to say Norm Duke, but that's not it.
That's not it.
You sure?
I know that's not it.
Could have fooled me. I said the line, and I could have fooled me. Anyways,
it's Pete Weber.
Weber? Yeah.
Look at that.
That
Good
was
pull.
towards a 12-year-old kid in the stands, by the way. He said something along those lines. It was like a 12-year-old kid heckling him.
Man. If he's a freaking Red Sox or a Philly or a Dodger, I'll be sad. Frankly, at this point, I like watching Juan Soto hit. That's what I'm going to say. I like to watch him hit. It's really fun. And I don't really watch baseball outside of the Mets and the Yankees. So selfishly, I'm 95% I want him to be a Met. And if there's 5% chance he's not a Met, I'd rather him still be in New York. And some Yankee fans might get mad at me, like my buddy who unsubscribed from us on the podcast because I high-fived my father-in-law when Giancarlo Stanton hit a home run. I don't know if anyone saw that comment on YouTube. That was fun. He whatever. But yeah, that's how I feel. That's enough Soto, Pat. I can't believe you just did that. That was 2.5 minutes I can't get back of my life now. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. But let's talk about the New York Knicks because I think it's a good place to start. This team has been another big topic of conversation, but at least they're currently playing their sport. And at least they're currently giving people, fans and not fans alike, a chance to watch this new conglomeration of talent, this new starting lineup, this new bench, everything feeling new outside of really Brunson and Hart. And even OG Anunoby, who was here last year, feels a little bit new. But currently, the Knicks just defeated the Orlando Magic with flying colors in their Tuesday night NBA Cup game, which clinches the Knicks into the next round, the knockout stages of the NBA Cup. But much to the chagrin of Knicks fans, Pat and Cody, Knicks fans have not been super thrilled with their performance so far this year. They currently sit in fourth, now just a game behind Orlando after just beating them here. But it hasn't been rainbows and butterflies. However, I think there's a lot of different things to talk about, a lot of different things to digest when it comes to this Knicks team. So, Pat, I actually haven't really spoken much Knicks with you so far this year. So before I get into all my stuff and into my bag of Knicks takes, I want to get your opinion. I want to get your take about where you kind of started off and your journey to where we are now as we reach like that 20-25 game mark.
Yeah, I mean, I could. Oof. All right, I'll try to keep this short and sweet about the Knicks. They're a work in progress defensively, which, that's kind of like we all should have expected that, right? For the last couple of years, it's been, man, the Knicks are. This is like 90s Knicks we're watching. The gritty defense, the rebounding, the second chance points, despite not having the most talent on the floor. But man, if we just had a big that could shoot a three, holy crap, we could compete with the Celtics. If we had, a Mikal Bridges type player that has been basically averaging like 18 points per game for his career, like efficient shooter and plays lockdown defense, wow, we could be an NBA Finals contender. And the Knicks, literally, Leon Rose went out and got all of those things. Got Mikal Bridges, got Karl Anthony Towns, and like everybody's upset, everybody's pissed. And I think as a fan, there's a certain level of normalness, and that's fandom, right? Like when the Knicks were 5-6 and they just lost to the Chicago Bulls, and myself included, I'm like, dude, this team just sucks right now. They suck. They're just a mediocre basketball team. They're one of the worst defensive teams in basketball. Fourth quarter, they can't stop a nosebleed. Like, you could throw me out there, my broken-ass jump shot, and I could probably hit a couple of shots in the fourth quarter against the Knicks because the final 12 minutes, they just melt. And then that turns into, Tibbs police. He's running these guys into the ground already, which, I mean, I think, not to be the Tibbs police, there was some validity to, right? I mean, you got Josh Hart and Brunson and Cat playing 40 minutes like 2-3 times already, 3-4 times in the first 10 games. So there was a lot of concern, but, then they ripped off a nice little 4-game win streak and, they crushed Denver on the road. But even then, there's, the loss at Utah. I know they're not going to go, they're not going to win. It's not going to be the January Knicks we saw from last year where they were virtually untouchable. But it's still just they have, they blow out Phoenix on the road. Then they come back and they lose to Utah a couple days later. They blow out Jokic and the Nuggets on the road. And then they come back and lose to Dallas on the road without, I think that game was without Luka, wasn't it? Yeah, without Luka 2 days later. And then, since then, they barely beat Charlotte. They crushed New Orleans and they crush Orlando tonight on this Tuesday that we're recording. So I don't really give a damn about the NBA Cup. Would I like to win it? Sure. If you're telling me I can only have one, it's 1,000,000% NBA Finals and NBA title, and I don't give a goddamn about the NBA Cup. But yeah, sure, it'd be nice for them to win it. Like, I'm not going to be mad if the Knicks win it. Be like, it doesn't mean anything unless they win the NBA Finals. I think it's a nice little touch.
You should try the baby voice that I did before.
So, they went unbeaten in the NBA Cup. They're on to the quarterfinals. I think those kinds of games, which will be high intensity, I think it's a nice little precursor to 5 months down the road. So they're finally starting to find their form. Their defense is there. And just a couple of bullet points on each player. OG was doing great. He was averaging like 21 points a game. He goes bananas in that Denver game, drops 40. He basically hasn't hit a 3 since. I didn't see the final box score from this game tonight.
He was 4-7 tonight.
Okay, so
he's back.
Yeah, so okay, OG back. So 0 for 15. I'm not going to worry about it then because he broke the streak. But he's had a little bit of up and down offensively. Bridges, we know how bad he was the first couple of weeks. I mean, that's all everybody could talk about when it came to the Knicks. So you traded all those draft picks for Mikal Bridges. Oh, the guy sucks. He's washed. Hey, he just dropped 31 points the other day against New Orleans. I don't care who's out. I mean, he's been shooting the ball pretty well, efficiently for the last couple of games before that. Hit 4 threes against Dallas, hit 4 threes against the Nets, hit 7 threes in the 2 games against the Nets. So, he's been, and then, to hit on some positives, Cat, for the most part, has been a freaking revelation, man, all year long. He's on a historic pace with the way he's shooting the ball from beyond the arc. I know the last couple of games he cooled off a little bit, but I mean, he's still at 46% from deep coming into tonight. I mean, this is for everybody that was saying that Cat's soft. I mean, I've seen a couple of glimpses of it, only I think because the Knicks defensive rotation, like they're getting caught in if they want to have drop or if they want to have, be aggressive with the pick and roll, and other teams have just been finding a way to exploit that. So when we talk about how this team needs to gel, it wasn't really offensively. Like they've been fine offensively. They've been great. Again, there's been several games where they just can't miss, and they're keeping up with, blowing out Denver. Like I said, putting up 145, putting up 138 on the road against Phoenix. So it's defensively where they continue to need to gel, giving up a $129 against Dallas without Luka and getting just torched in the off the 3-point line, letting the Bulls go on those stretches that they did in that game a couple of weeks ago. It's defensively where this team needs to gel. I still ultimately think this team's got a shot of making it to the NBA Finals. I do think they have a chance to take out the Celtics. We saw the plethora of injuries that ran through the entire Eastern Conference that allowed the Celtics to cakewalk to the finals, and they probably would have gotten there anyway because they were that damn good. But who the hell knows what the playoffs are going to bring? Just everything that we know now, I'm still confident that the Knicks have a legit shot of getting to the finals, and I would be disappointed if they don't get to the conference finals. So I would say so far through 21 games now, I'd like to see this team continue to improve defensively, but I think they're in an okay place. I think all the sky is falling that was happening in the first 3 weeks of the season, I think we're past that.
I'm glad that you believe that as well, because it's obvious the sky's not falling. I mean, it's a crazy thing to me that people so early in the season were deeming the Knicks fleeced by the Brooklyn Nets. Like, what are we doing here? We got fleeced because of the picks that we gave up. What were the Knicks doing with those picks, right? They don't really have that much space for that many more players. They need 1 or 2 more players in the rotation here. They need all these picks. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. Plus, Mikal Bridges, you don't love him. He hasn't hit shots yet. Pay attention to what he's doing on the court. He's doing more than just taking threes. He's doing more than just whatever the defensive box plus minus is, because I know I'll bring those numbers up from time to time, but this guy's all over the place. He's doing a lot, right? So all that stuff never made sense to me, and you have to give them time to click, to find their rhythm with one another, to figure out how they play off of one another. And guess what? This offense clicked so much quicker than you could have possibly imagined. Pat, you mentioned how great the offense has been. They've been the best. They're number 1 in offensive rating, number 1 in the league, above the Cavs, who couldn't lose for a freaking month and a half, above the Celtics, who are the most talented roster in the NBA, above OKC, whose offensive rating actually isn't very good, despite how well they're playing basketball overall. This Knicks offense has been electric. And I was telling Cody about this before we started recording, so I'll drop it on you guys now. I don't think the Knicks have a roster problem. I don't think they have a performance problem. I think Knicks fans have a problem, Pat. I think the Knicks fans are completely flabbergasted how to handle a team that's great on offense and mediocre on defense. It is a new world. It is something they're not remotely accustomed to. And if this team had the same exact record with the number 3 ranked defense or the number 1 ranked defense and the 18th ranked offense, that would be like wearing a blanket at home on a Sunday night watching football for Knicks fans. They're not used to modern day basketball like this. And I'm not saying they're perfect, right? Of course, I want their defense to get better. I think their defense will get better when 2 of their centers get back to playing. Jericho Sims, there was a stat I saw today. Oh, people are only shooting 33% against Jericho Sims at the basket, and they're shooting 90% against Towns. BS. The reason that number is probably so low for Sims is because he's so bad at defense half the time that he's nowhere near the rim when his guy's scoring. It doesn't count on his statistic. Yeah, if he happens to be under the rim, he might do some good stuff on defense. This team has plenty of time and plenty of reasons to be great. But the big thing here is fans have no clue how to watch a team that isn't a grit grind. If they score over 100 points, we're going to lose. This is a different team. This is what we've been asking for. Every year for the past 4 years, or 3 out of the last 4 years, when we're in the playoffs and we watch this team in the playoffs, we go, oh my God, ball stopping. Randall getting stuck and losing the ball in the post. Brunson, if he doesn't do it all by himself, we suck on offense. Now we have a team that moves the ball like crazy, gets out in transition, shoots threes from every position on the court. It's beautiful. I've never seen a Knicks offense play like this before. It's fantastic. It's 21 games into the year, and they can be 10 games over 500 by 30 games. That's where we are. So if you're over here still complaining about this, I beg you to give it a few more weeks, because this record's already getting better, and you're watching the best offense your Knicks fanhood life easily. Has the Knicks had a number 1 offense in the league ever? I doubt it. So enjoy your freaking advantages on the court. I'm sick of Knicks fans crying about a team that's number 1 in offense and absolutely getting better on defense.
Could the Knicks maybe benefit from adding a Juan Soto type?
Bad on defense, Cody. Can't run the bases.
I would be echoing a lot of what you guys have been saying. What I've been seeing is a lot similar. I've also always kind of felt that when new teams come together, that it's not always offensively that it takes a long time to gel, or it takes time. That on the defensive side, it does take just as long, if not longer, to understand where your rotations are coming from, where your help defense is. Cat is playing a role as a center that he doesn't have Rudy Gobert next to him right now, but he eventually should have Mitch Robinson. So, and for the Mikal Bridges people out there, I understand that you feel you gave up a lot. Like, it's kind of like the early Lindor days of look at the contract, not just the player, but look at what Mikal Bridges is. There's a reason they gave up so much, because he was a final piece type of an addition. He's the type of guy that does not need the ball in his hands, and that's why he's such a perfect fit. Doesn't need to be putting up 22 a game to affect the game and impact it on both sides of the floor. He's a good decision maker. He's a very good three-point shooter, a silky smooth mid-range jump shot, and could put the ball on the floor and dish it out. Their offense looks fantastic. The pick and roll with Brunson and Cat is getting better and better to a point where it's like you really don't know what you can do to stop it. Because if you go and blitz Jalen, he's going to make that decision, and Cat's rim running, and he's dangerous down there. Damn near impossible to stop. You don't blitz Jalen, he's going to beat you with the 3. He might beat you in the mid-range. Their offense is running. It's humming. They're 4th in the East for all the crybabies out there. So, yes, they're playing better ball now. I know that they weren't off to the great start you wanted them to be, but they weren't off to the greatest start last year either, and look how that turned out. We're 1 quarter into the season, in a long, long season. I think they're right where they need to be. If I had a fear of the Knicks, right now, my fear is the hope, I guess, that I'm putting into what Mitchell Robinson's going to be when he gets back, because we know he's a health bet. Not because I don't think that he's going to fit in or because he's going to disrupt the flow or anything like that, but because you're betting a lot on his health. And right now, you're really seeing the impact of not having him, but you also don't have Precious Achiuwa. That's a huge factor to have 2 guys at that role that aren't playing basketball. And as a Thunder fan, I watched it for a while too. When Chet went down, there was 3-4 games where Jalen Williams at 6'6" was playing center. That's not the same team that I'm going to see down the stretch. This is not ultimately all that you're going to see, especially on the defensive side. So I think the Knicks are just fine and starting to find a rhythm. and they will be a team that is top 2 in the East, I think, when it's all said and done, contending with Boston, at least as of right now, for the Eastern Conference.
And not only are the Knicks number 1 in offensive rating, Pete and Cody, they're also number 1 in assist turnover, 2.2, better than the Thunder, better than the Celtics, better than the Nuggets. So I rarely watch a game this year and I'm like, Jesus Christ, another turnover, another sloppy pass. Like, they're making the right decisions. And Pete, like you said, like you've never watched better offensive basketball for a Knicks team in your life. And I get it. The NBA has changed. It's all pull up threes. It's analytics. I mean, if you don't want to watch the sport, don't watch it. But if you're going to watch it, like, realize that what every team is trying to do, nobody's doing it better offensively consistently so far than the New York Knicks. So, Pete, I agree with you. You were angry. You're pissed off. You had a fire at some Knicks fans that have complained. And look, even then, yeah, like the Knicks' offensive rebound percentage, they're 14th. They're still number 6 overall. So they haven't been crashing the glass because, like you said, Mitchell Robinson's been hurt. Precious Achiuwa's been hurt. Precious is coming back next week. So sorry, Ariel Huck-Tuaporti. Like, probably not going to play the rest of the year. Go down to Westchester.
He can't even play now. Right? He's getting no burn. Right? I'm sorry to jump in there, Pat, but to further your point, like, Jericho Sims is playing on the course of the year 14 minutes per game. He's been playing a little bit better over the past week or so. Think about when Precious Achiuwa alone is back. You can trust him for 19 to 20 minutes, 22 minutes a game. Easily. You can trust him. Is he amazing? Absolutely not. He's freaking better than Jericho Sims on offense and on defense and, frankly, on rebounding. Like, yeah, when Jericho Sims jumps through the roof to grab a rebound, it looks great. He's not a fantastic rebounder, right? So Precious is better. That trickles up to 18 to 22 minutes. And then, yeah, you can grab Josh Hart down from 37 to 35. You can get OG down to 35 minutes. Mikal Bridges, he can seemingly do whatever he wants. Josh Hart wants to play every minute too. But the point is that Sims factor of it all makes a huge, huge difference. I broke this down with Alec on the podcast I did a week and a half ago here. I want to just give you guys these same numbers here, right? And I know I just talked about Mikal Bridges' box plus minus being negative and that I don't care. It's because he has a track record, and I think it's going to get better. Jericho Sims, no track record. He sucks. His box plus minus is negative 2.2. It was actually worse a week and a half ago. It was at negative like 3.5 to 4. If Precious Achiuwa comes in at a net zero, it's a massive difference. That's 15 to 22 minutes of net zero versus 15 minutes of net negative. That's a massive difference. And then obviously the Mitchell Robinson side of it as well coming in to make an even bigger difference for what he brings to the table.
Yeah, and just one other quick shout out to a player here. I kind of love Campaign, and I knew I would love Campaign. That ugly-ass jump shot last year when he was with the Sixers, and I was like, this guy got to stop making threes to keep the Sixers in these games in that playoff series. Because that's what he does, man. He comes on with that second unit when he's been running with Deuce since Deuce has come back here the last couple of games from the injury. And when he's on the floor with Hart, or, if they have him sometimes, I think rarely they'll have him and Brunson on at the same time. But, hit 5 threes in that game against Washington. He's had a couple of games, a bunch of games where he hit 3-4 threes, and it all seems like it's at a good moment. Like, it's not just like empty buckets that he's scoring. And there's a couple of games where he's dishing out 5-6 assists. Like, he knows his role in the offense. He flourishes. He's a good defensive player, and he's going to be somebody I can't wait to watch come April, come May, hopefully come June. So I just want to shout out Campaign. Might be the ugliest player in basketball and the ugliest jump shot, but I love having him on my team.
He's a big-time playoff guy, though. Like, he loves that moment. He's never going to shy away from it. He'll probably take 1 or 2 heat checks that'll make you want to pull your hair out, but the Thunder product, learn from Russell Westbrook. That's what you can expect from my guy Campaign, man. He just was known for his dancing. Not anymore.
Had to squeeze in a Russ and an OKC drop.
Well, right, that's where he came from.
Sneaky always been on good teams, Campaign, right? Like, went to Phoenix, kind of played an integral part in their little championship run.
I think he was with Chicago for a while, and I want to say they were a playoff team when he was there, no?
I don't remember. He definitely had a stop somewhere between.
He was there. I know that.
Yeah, he went to Chicago from OKC in his second year, and he was there for 3 years. Then got traded to Cleveland, I think, at the deadline in 2019, and then was with Phoenix for 4 years, and then Milwaukee, Phoenix last year. I mean, Milwaukee, Philly last year, and then the Knicks now.
And like career 37% 3-point shooter, you kind of can feel that shots, yeah, it's a little streaky, but it's consistent enough. And the heat check goes in, and you can feel it when you are an opposing fan. Like last year, Pat, you nailed it. When you watched him as a Knicks fan on Philly, it was petrifying. Like it was, God damn, is this guy about to flip this whole game? And it felt like he did on occasion. But the way he pushes the ball is the biggest thing for me. Like he gets in there and he's like, let's run, let's run, let's run. And they're smart about it. Like you said about the assist to turnover ratio, they're not making dumb decisions. They pull it back when they need to, but having that aspect to the Knicks offense, again, something we are just not used to. Who's the best transition Knicks player that you can think of off the top of your head? Like in our lifetime, who's a J.R. Smith? Is that it? Who's a transition bucket?
Julius Randle.
Yeah, but he's way more known for dribbling the ball to death than he is getting in transition. Like he can score in transition. He had his moments, but he was known for stopping the ball, not for pushing it. You know?
Pablo Pergioni.
Alexis Shved. Lou Munson.
Alec Burks the first time, not the second time. That's
distinction.
It. No, it's just something that has been irking me clearly. And you're right, Pat. I got a little fire in the belly on that take there because I can't stand it. And I feel like I'm speaking from a place of further NBA knowledge than like your average Knicks fan. I'm not trying to say like, oh, you don't know ball. I'm not going to that route. I just feel like I watch more teams than your average Knicks fan. Like your average Knicks fan is watching the Knicks. I get it. Cody, Pat, I know the two of you both are just like me watching like the most random games. I know Cody has on OKC right now. I know we're watching like random Kings games and Warriors and Nuggets and all this stuff. This Knicks team is a 21st century, or I should say 2020s team for the first time in the 2020s. And I'm not saying that's perfect. I'm not saying that's going to win them a championship, but it is absolutely refreshing to watch an offense like this. I can't state it enough. This is a new territory for Knicks fans. It's going to take some time to get used to, but this defense will get better.
Can I just say real quick, one, you're right. I was watching some Hornets Sixers. I actually got a lot of that tonight. But
there you go.
You notice that Knicks fans are not willing to overreact to the start that the Cavs have. Like, I haven't heard one Knicks fan who's like, yeah, we fear the Cavs or this is a different team now. Yeah, they're 18-3, but there's no reaction. And I think that's fine. But you're willing to overreact to the first 10 to 12 games of the Knicks and call them a different team. And the trade was this or the Bridges trade was that and kind of write them off so quickly. Yet you won't do the same for another team in Cleveland and call them a better team than they were last year, when I think they're a better team than last year. And then the other thing is you worry about the defense, but we're talking about dogs coming back and Achua and Mitch to shore up that rotation, to make that 9-man rotation with Campaign and Miles Deuce McBride in it. That's a serious 9-man rotation when all healthy. So it will look a lot different, especially with those two back. Show the patience. The offense being what it is such a huge positive already. The defense will come. Give it some time.
And now last thing on the Knicks, Pat, I just want to ask you, because you touched on him before. I want to get your fuller fledged take here on Karl Anthony Towns. Like, obviously, he's a guy with a history of stupid fouls, a history of being called soft, a history of, after all that and all his weird stuff that he says in interviews and whatnot. But now we've watched him like up close and personal for 21 games here. Where is your stance on Cat now, specifically the Knicks center, Karl Anthony Towns, and what he's brought to this team?
I think he's been great. I think overall he's been great. Sure, there's a couple of times where I've watched where, again, like I don't think we can't expect him to be Mitchell Robinson. So maybe that's my fault as well. Like thinking, all right, Mitch is out, so Cat's got to stay close to the rim. But again, you see how basketball is played nowadays. Like teams draw the bigs out to the perimeter, and when the Knicks have been playing drop coverage, like him and Brunson, him and Hart, him and Bridges, like they have not been getting on the same page of their defensive spacing, how to attack the pick and rolls against them, going under it or going through it versus slacking back on it. Like Cat's, I think for the most part, I'm not an expert, but like from what I've been watching, it doesn't feel like Cat's like making a lot of defensive mistakes. I feel like he's been coached to play drop coverage. I think he's done an incredible job getting rebounds. I mean, he's averaging 13 boards a game. Like, those aren't just empty rebounds. He's going out and he's getting them. And like you said, the biggest thing that Karl-Anthony Towns came here to do was score and get that pick and roll game with Brunson. And it's been freaking dynamite so far. It has been nearly unbeatable. So I hope it continues to get better, because it's scary to think of where it could be in another 5 months from now. And then again, he's not going to be tasked. Like, I'm actually intrigued and interested to see how many minutes per game he and Mitch spend on the floor together, whether it's 15, maybe 18. I don't think it can be too much more than that, but for those minutes where they're both on the floor, how the Knicks look defensively, and if Cat's, willing to do the things defensively while Mitch is doing what he does, protect the rim, grab boards, block shots, be that gritty glue guy that we love. So far, it's been the Cat experience for me on a scale of 1 to 10. It's been like an 8.5.
I would agree with that. And Cody, one more question. Now we'll move on to football here. What is your best bet on how the rotation will play out when Mitchell Robinson's back? I know the Mitchell Robinson thing obviously is not as clear cut. Like, Precious seems a little closer, but they're both getting closer here. Do you expect Mitchell Robinson, not like game one, but once he's in a flow, to be in the starting rotation, A, or B, in the closing rotation? And then who gets moved if you think he gets in that spot at all?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and I think if things go well for the Knicks and everyone is healthy and it's working, that it's probably matchup dependent, right? If you've got a team with a big that you feel like, hey, Carl is just not getting it done himself, but obviously we can still use him on the floor, because it's not like those two together is going to clog up the paint. Cat not barely, but he doesn't have to play inside the paint. And Mitch is going to do so much, just like Hartenstein's doing with OKC, which I'm getting to see firsthand now. He does so much in the pick and roll game. Like Pat alluded to it earlier, how defenses are playing and dragging out bigs anyway. I don't fear that there's going to be some type of congestion down low with those two playing together. So I think if it goes well, that it's probably Josh Hart. As long as Mikal Bridges is holding up his end of the bargain, he does so many of those things. OG does so many of those things. Josh Hart does them and has to do them because he's not as talented, realistically, as a Mikal Bridges or an OG Anunoby. So if you need to play big, it's probably Josh Hart that gets pushed out of the closing lineup. But it's a really good problem to have, where you can say, hey, you know what? We don't need to have this big. We can play with Josh and play the five that you've got starting right now together. But hey, they're getting crushed on the boards. We're getting killed by their big man. We need to play Mitchell Robinson down the stretch. We can do that. That's a huge additive.
Yeah, I think it's also lead dependent, right? It's like if they're kind of up a little bit and they're trying to squeeze the other team, then Mitch is in. It does feel like, to me, Hart has to be in a closing lineup, though. Like, that's the thing. So how do you not have this grit, this mentality, this loose ball fiend that Josh Hart has become? How do you not have him on the court at the end of a game? So that's going to be the tough decision. And Cat's on the floor too. So unless he's in foul trouble, which will happen twice a week, but like that's going to be the tough spot for Tibbs.
I think undisputedly, it's Brunson, it's OG, and it's Cat. Those three guys, absolute 1,000% are on the floor to close a game. And then
Agreed.
is it
3 for 2 then?
Is it then Bridges or Hart? Or is it Bridges,
Hart and
Mitch?
And Mitch really
out of
fighting
those
for
three,
2 spots, right?
You got to pick 2.
Yeah, I think, like Cody said,
game flow matters too. Like Pete, like it all matters, but I don't think there's exactly one answer just yet. Because you're right. How do you take Josh Hart off the floor in those big moments?
I don't think you can. I really don't. And that's going to be the tough part. I think Mitch will be the odd man out until he's needed. I think Mitch is odd out until it's specific they can't get a board, or it's like we're up 8 and he's just going to go protect the rim or whatever it may be.
That's great. Like against Boston, Mitch can't be in the closing lineup, I don't think.
Yeah, not even close.
I don't think he can.
Yeah, but if it's against Embiid, then you want him in there.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's good stuff. And again, playing out these options should make you feel better as a Knicks fan, right? So in Tibbs, we trust. In Leon Rose, we trust. If this team is able to add one piece too on top of Mitch and Precious Achiuwa getting healthy, you're looking at that depth being a strength again. It's that simple, because McBride, who didn't get enough love, got a little love earlier on from Patty. Like McBride's been a beast too. All right. New York Knicks. I think all three of us, surprisingly, feel kind of similarly positive and optimistic. I was almost going to say pessimistic there. That is not what I meant to say. So, yeah, I think we're feeling good. And hopefully a Knicks fan out there, if you're listening to this, you're getting a little bit more comfortable with this new squad. But all right, Subway Sports Talk, Pat Boyle, Cody O'Connor, and myself, Pete Kennedy. Now it's time to talk about football. The NFL is entering week 14. It's usually the last week for fantasy regular seasons, which means there's a lot of things still to happen for us on our personal lives of football watching, on fantasy and gambling and all that stuff. But we're getting to the thick of it when it comes to playoff chases, when it comes to awards chases, and what better place to go through it than to talk about the quarterbacks. So what I want to do with this exercise here, I kind of want to go stock up, stock down, obviously stock equal being an option as well, because where we've come into this season on how we thought these quarterbacks ranked out, who's in the top 5 undisputed, who's the top 10, top half of the league, there's been a good bit of moving parts here. Obviously, injuries have a small part or maybe a medium-sized part to play in some of these rankings here. We're not going to rank 1 through 20 or anything like that, but I want to just feel from Pat and from Cody and from myself, who's rising stock, who's falling, who are we trusting now down the stretch of this regular season? And I think we're going to go right off the bat and say, with a Josh Allen and a Patrick Mahomes, it's just undisputable, I think is the word that we just heard. They're 1 and 2, right? Rank them how you want them. They seem to be the most trustworthy. Stock is so high it can't even be rising anymore. Is that fair to say? Do we have anything else to say about Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes right now?
I do.
No, sir.
I do.
Hit me, Patty.
Lamar Jackson, hasn't played better than Mahomes. Mahomes has not been that great this year.
That's incredibly fair, and I think
More
that's
than just this year, though, right?
But that's a good point, and I'm glad that you actually asked that question, because the reason I didn't bring up Lamar into that trio is kind of because the team success, right? So they are not as team successful as the Bills or the Chiefs right now, as they sit 8-5, and they're still technically just fighting for, a playoff spot, kind of, right? So you have the Ravens, and then you have the Chargers and Broncos all with 8 wins. And then you have some lingerers who, if the Ravens somehow, some way fault up a little bit here, like it's unlikely they don't make the playoffs, very unlikely they don't make the playoffs. But I just felt like it was unfair to just put them up. Though I do agree, individually, Lamar Jackson is right there in that top 3, and it's undisputed that way. I don't think everyone agrees on that, though. I think he's still getting some flack for not winning a big game, which we can discuss now.
Yeah, sure. And if you want to say in totality, who do you if we're going who you're starting a franchise today, who's your quarterback, then it's tough to not say Mahomes and Josh Allen 1-2. But, again, Lamar was the MVP last year. He's having him and
better season
his
this
season
year
right now versus Mahomes is not even close.
Not even close.
Not even
Agreed.
close.
Agreed.
But
so hold on.
At the end of the day, like you said, Super Bowl, I get to pick my quarterback. Probably picking Mahomes.
Right. So that's kind of why I set it up that way. So let's start here. So let's go stock rising, stock falling, stock equal. And we'll start right off the bat with Lamar Jackson, because it's a weird conversation. How do you get a higher stock from winning the MVP? But also coming into play is the other stuff that fans like to throw out there about, oh, well, he lost to Mahomes. Oh, well, he lost 2 games that he definitely shouldn't have lost this year. Whether or not it's a quarterback stat, wins or losses, right? That whole conversation comes into play. So when it comes to Lamar Jackson, Pat, you kind of explained how you feel about Lamar. I think his numbers are out of control, impressive. Is there anything left to be desired, or are you making some outside forces being the reason for the 8-5 record for Baltimore right now?
No, I would say it's fourth quarter. It's the fourth quarter, whether it's the defense that blew a 10-point, double-digit lead all the way back in week 2 against the Raiders, or whether I think it is on Lamar. Really after the first quarter, they did absolutely nothing against Philadelphia. And I think that's a game where, okay, you go up 9-0, and then the Eagles punch you back in the mouth, and your offense doesn't do anything since. Third quarter, one of those drives in the third quarter to get them back in the game or to get them in front, or in the fourth quarter to get you in front. Like, there needs to be a drive where Lamar takes over. So I would agree with you. And I think that's probably why he hasn't won a Super Bowl, hasn't been to a Super Bowl yet, is because in the moments that Mahomes does rise above everybody else, and, who else can you even say? Who else can you even put in that conversation? 1 year where Joe Burrow did that?
Matt Stafford 1 year, 3 years ago, right?
So,
yeah.
Like, those are the areas where games on the line, Derrick Henry in the run game's getting shut down. Zay Flowers isn't wide open. Mark Andrews isn't. Well, yeah, Mark Andrews for the first half of this year was invisible, or they just didn't throw him the football. But, like, you get what I'm saying? Like, Lamar needed to take over that game in the second half against the Eagles. And I know the Phillies defense has been fantastic. Cooper DeJean, D''Jean. I don't know if you guys saw Foxworth say that. I thought that was hilarious. Not a position that a lot of Cooper DeJeans play corner, so I think we need to put the apostrophe between the D and the Jean. The Phillies defense has been great and was great on Sunday, but that's a spot where, Lamar needs to rise above and take over and show that he's a two-time MVP winner. And, nothing he really did helped their cause. So I would say stock up. But the Ravens are 8-5. I don't know if we necessarily do either of you guys think, let's say in Buffalo, in Kansas City, is Lamar Jackson willing the Ravens to a win over Josh Allen and the Bills this year, over Mahomes and the Chiefs this year on the road? I don't know. I don't think so. I need to see otherwise from Lamar. As much as I think he belongs in that conversation with Josh Allen and Mahomes, need to see it from him.
But aren't you talking yourself into a stock equal then? Because we have seen this, maybe this level of numbers are a little bit different, but we've pretty much seen this Lamar Jackson. He's unbelievably talented, but sometimes the counting stats here just don't always match to what's actually going on. They are 8-5. Like, Joe Burrow's counting stats are unbelievable. They're 4-8. And at some point, that stuff does really have to matter. Lamar on Sunday, 237, 2 touchdowns, 8 runs, 79 yards, 23 for 36. That's a good day at the office, right? But a lot of that came in garbage time where it really didn't matter anymore. They had a sick throw to Mark Andrews in the first quarter, put him up, and they're up 9-0. And like you said, nothing from that point on. Really good defense, time to show it, didn't show it for whatever reason. So, to me, he's just stock equal because their record has to matter in this conversation where it's like, we're going to put him on the same level as Mahomes, who we're like, hey, what an awful year from this guy. This guy's been awful. They're 11-1. He hasn't been great. His numbers don't look good, but every time it matters the absolute most, you trust that he's going to move the chains, get the score, make the big play, and do whatever it takes to win. He's that level. That's why Lamar isn't there yet. And the Bills, I guess, but Josh Allen himself he's got the same type of numbers, not the same type of numbers, but he's got a team that's less talented, was put on the second tier in their own division, maybe make the playoffs. They were like a fringe playoff team according to odds this year. He's on the MVP track. He deserves to be there with Mahomes. And Lamar is talent-wise there, belief that he can be there, but he hasn't done it yet. And at 8-5 this year, I don't know that his numbers alone will allow me to have him as a stock increasing. I think it's just equal because he's been unbelievable, but the 8-5 record keeps him right where he's been.
I agree with Cody. I think it's stock equal based upon he was the MVP last year. And if his team was 1 or 2 wins better right now, I think he'd be the favorite for MVP currently based upon what he's doing. This is where the outside stuff comes into play and why I think it's fun to do this exercise because it forces us to look at some of the outside forces here. The Baltimore Ravens are 19th in the league in yards per play defensively, and they are 24th in scoring defense. So their defense is bottom third or worse by both of those metrics there. And then you look across the board and you see the Bills, they're top 10 in scoring defense. You see the Kansas City Chiefs, they're 13th. That's a pretty big factor right there. And it's not like, the Ravens are average on defense right now. They're bottom third, they're bottom fourth of defenses in the NFL. And you could easily argue that those are the 2 wins, right? So I think stock equals the right move for Lamar Jackson because he's been outrageous. I mean, he's second in the league in yards. He's highest touchdown percentage in the league, 29 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. And you saw all during that Philly game, the broadcast saying, well, did you even see these 3 interceptions? none of them were Lamar Jackson's fault, which I agree with. They weren't, but he's missed some throws. Sure, whatever. You can point at, misses here, misses there, the whole nine. His numbers as an individual quarterback are untouchable. So in my opinion, he is undisputed top 3, but I think that's stock equal because that's where he was last year too. He was top 3 last year. He's top 3 this year. And even if he's having a better season statistically as a quarterback, there's a little left to prove for him where it doesn't feel that way for Allen and Mahomes right now. So that's, semantics, if you will, on Lamar Jackson. But it's a good place to start because he is so interesting, and they're 8-5, and there's a lot to prove for that entire organization and him being the face of the Baltimore Ravens. All right, let's stick in the AFC North here. This one is pretty obvious, I think, but let's go to Russell Wilson right now. Russell Wilson leading the 9-3 Steelers. Is this the easiest stock up across the league? Like, I don't know where his stock has him at in a rankings perspective, but is this the easiest stock up in the league? Is there anybody else who's increased their value more than Russell Wilson in 2024?
Sam Darnold, but I can't necessarily, I think they're equal. The records, the Minnesota being 10-2, but I mean, Russ, since he took over, he's only lost once, right? He's 5-1. If I remember correctly, he's played 6 games, and I think the Steelers have only lost once in that span, and that was to the Browns, 2 Thursdays ago. So,
yep.
It's tough to fight you on that, man, and I got to eat a lot of crow when it comes to Russell Wilson because I thought every one of the Denver Broncos' downfalls the last 2 years was because of him. And look, it's not like he was playing great and the Broncos were just crap around him. He wasn't playing that great, but lo and behold, somehow with Arthur freaking Smith as the offensive coordinator and with a Steelers offense that doesn't have a lot of talent outside of George Pickens, he has found some magic. Maybe he's eating some more Danger Witches or whatever the hell that awkward ass cringy Subway commercial that he had. Whatever the fit he's got going on with Arthur Smith in this offense, man, they've got a really good run game with Najee, who looked like he was like 35, 20, however old he is, going on 40 at times last year. He's having a great year running the football. Jaylen Warren's a good compliment. And Russ just has good chemistry, man. He's got good chemistry with Pickens. He's got a perfect security blanket with Freiermuth this year. And the way that he's gotten guys like Calvin Austin mixed into the game as well, Van Jefferson, Russ is making throws, man. He's got a really good blend of he's taken some deep shots down the field. And yeah, he's thrown a couple of picks. I think he's only thrown 3 on the year, but he's taken some deep shots down the field while also then protecting the ball, knowing when to drop it off, check it down, play it safe. So, and the Steelers offense has been really damn good. And I still couldn't believe it when Tomlin benched Fields for him, but I can't complain anymore. He has been fantastic, man. You look at passer rating; he's number 5 right now in the NFL. He's ahead of Darnold. He's ahead of Jalen Hurts. He's ahead of Josh Allen. He's ahead of Herbert. He's ahead of Love. He's ahead of Mahomes. He's been really good. So yeah, like you said, this is along with Sam Darnold, this is the easiest stock up in this year.
You talk about needing to eat some crow. I mean, I was leading the Russ is washed bandwagon since he got traded from Seattle. And for a couple years, I couldn't have been, proven any more right. But his stock came so far down that I was even willing to buy. I mean, he was getting signed for the vet minimum. I wanted the Giants to take a flyer on him. I thought there was no reason not to, but let's go ahead and 5 times that salary and go get Drew Lock, but this isn't about them. He's been unbelievable. And the fact that he was able to win that shootout style game with the Bengals, I think that just solidified any fears of can the Steelers actually compete in the AFC. I think they've just proven that they can because they can play in different styles. They're going to be able to beat you up defensively and play that gross, tough, down the stretch January football where it's just control the clock and possession and 17-14 type of game. And then they just show, hey, we can put up 45 on your head, and I don't care how bad the Bengals defense is. We can do that one too. So obviously his stock is through the roof, and he's raising his stock to a point where I think he's re-entering the Hall of Fame conversation with this rise back on his stock. Because if he wins a playoff game, couple playoffs games, all of a sudden the narrative on Russ is going to change to a point where maybe he's re-entering that Hall of Fame conversation. And then when you go to Darnold, he's ignited his whole career. So it's kind of funny to try to figure whose stock has risen and who's more importantly done it. Russ towards the end of his career but Sam Darnold just rejuvenated his career. So those are definitely the two highest risers this year. That's a great point.
And I think a great way to look at it too, because when we say stock up, stock down, which is why I wanted to do it this way, we don't mean that Russ has entered the top 5 conversation. But what have we been saying about the Steelers over the past, 5-6 years since Big Ben has been a shell of himself? It's like, damn, if this team just had average quarterback play, they'd be really freaking good. They were running Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges and Kenny Pickett, guys who are legitimately like ranked between 25 and 32 in the league, right? On any given Sunday, they're ranking between 25 and 32 at the quarterback position. You didn't need Russ to be number 6. You kind of needed him to be somewhere between 11 and 16. And God damn it, he is. He is being just good enough to do everything that they need to do. And funny enough, Cody, when you said the thing about the Giants, I thought to myself, oh, that wouldn't work. But then I thought for one more second and go, what did the Giants need? Somebody to make good decisions, anticipate a little bit, and take some good chances. And like that's what Daniel Jones was unable to do, is be anticipatory, to take those proper chances. And watching Russ like take calculated risks down the field to George Pickens and Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin is a thing of beauty. And yeah, I've been number one hater on the Steelers the past 2 years. I'm like, this team sucks. They win for no reason. I hate betting on them. I hate betting against them. I hate watching them. And now they're fun to watch. They're playing a very competent level of offense. Russell Wilson, stock up. Sam Darnold, will all agree again, stock up, because his stock was 0. And now he has a stock price that's worth, at least monitoring. And I don't think any of us are going to sit here and say like, oh, well, he's a bona fide, starter for the next like 7 years or anything like that. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But goddamn, he's a good starter right now. He's 23 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, top 7 in the NFL in passer rating right now. Sam Darnold, goddamn, good for him. All right, let's move on from that. I don't think we need to do too much Sam Darnold. I'm sure we'll talk some Vikings as we approach playoffs and, their validity as a contender as well. I want to jump across really quick to the NFC. We're going to hop around a little bit here just based on my own interest of, how these quarterbacks are kind of shaping up this year. I want to go to Jordan Love. Jordan Love is a very interesting one because it kind of depends on where you individually had his stock at the beginning of the year, where it went throughout the year, and where it is right now. So, Pat, I'll start with you. An interesting Jordan Love arc so far in 2024. Where is he at for you right now?
Yeah, Jordan Love is a tough one because you had the injury in the beginning of the year, so missed a couple of games, came back week 4, and I just feel like he's still, the last couple of games, sure, he's gotten his rhythm. They blew out the Niners where, yeah, he played good, didn't really have to do much. That game was kind of over almost immediately. Brandon Allen kind of, and McCaffrey, who's now looking like he's done for the year, you could tell he wasn't himself. So the 49ers were a shell themselves, but he didn't throw any picks. He didn't lose any, didn't fumble the ball. And kind of the same thing on Sunday night. He was methodical. That's the Jordan Love on Thanksgiving night against the Dolphins that the Packers need him to be. It's not the, hey, I'm going to throw for 390 yards against the Vikings and throw 4 touchdowns, but I'm also going to throw 3 picks like he did in week 4. Or from that stretch on, week 4 until week 11, where he threw an interception or more in every single game. He was doing a great job, that the deep ball threat with Watson, with Dobbs, with Wicks. Those guys also, the receiving core seems like it's never healthy. They've got a phenomenal running game now with Josh Jacobs, but it felt like Jordan Love giveth, Jordan Love taketh away. And I think over the last 2 games now, again, the Niners game, we saw that played out, but Thanksgiving night against the Dolphins, he was not perfect, but he was pretty damn close. And he was great in the red zone, and he took care of the football. This Packers team has a shot to get to the NFC Championship game if they get peak Jordan Love, which we saw him against Dallas, where like, if you didn't know about Jordan Love then, you freaking knew after they decimated the Cowboys and after they should have beaten the Niners too in the divisional round. So first couple weeks of the year, murky with the injuries and that 3-pick game against the Vikings where he was also making a bunch of incredible throws. But then, yeah, it was a lot of turnovers and not being able to take care of the football, whereas the elite quarterbacks, the Mahomes, the Josh Allens, for the most part, again, we remember Josh Allen a couple of years ago, couldn't stop turning the ball over in the red zone. It's been up and down for Jordan Love. This feels like a cop-out answer for me. I'm probably going to go stock equal because I don't think it's fair to assume that he was then just going to the leap he had, the rise he had the last 6 weeks of the regular season and into the playoffs. I don't think it was necessarily fair to assume, just like a lot of people did with CJ Stroud. We'll get to him, I'm sure, in a little bit.
That was going to be my next one because they have similar arcs.
I don't know if it's fair to assume that Jordan Love was immediately going to take the next big step like CJ Stroud was expected to do because it was only, I don't know, because it was the last couple of weeks of the season. Maybe I should be putting him, holding him to the same expectations as CJ Stroud. So I'll go stock equal my answer on Jordan Love. And it's really just because of the last couple of weeks here. I think coming off the bye week, I think he looks a much better quarterback. And who knows? He might go out against Detroit this upcoming and 2 days from now on Thursday night and throw 2 picks and throw an interception in the end zone that cost them the game. He might do that against Seattle on the road. So we'll see. But I feel like the last couple of games, I've loved what I've seen from Jordan Love. I feel like he's cleaned up a lot of those costly interceptions that cost Green Bay in the couple of losses they had. But for the most part, I'm going to go stock equal because I still have seen a lot of greatness from him this year. Not enough for me to say that his stock has gone down.
Yeah, I got him probably like a slight uptick in stock. And I think part of it is what you were saying late there, where it wasn't just assumed. And I know Pete and I both talked about this in the preview to the NFL season, that he was just going to be that exact guy that we saw against Dallas and in the playoffs and down the stretch for them when they needed him most. And even though he's third in the league in interceptions thrown, he's also 9-3, a relative shoo-in for the playoffs at this point. And I think that whatever side you're on Jordan Love, you better either buy or dump your stock before Thursday, because that game is going to tell us a lot. That's a huge divisional matchup. So if you're buying on Jordan Love, you want to do it before the Lions game, because if they go beat the Lions, that stock is rising and doing so quickly. So he's just a slight uptick because, like I said, didn't know exactly if he could repeat the success. We've seen how hard it is to repeat that success. He's been able to do it. He seems stable. They clearly seem like they've got their franchise guy, and the extension and the contract was the right move. He's proven that to be so far. And slight uptick because they are just going to be that steady force in the North.
I don't think it's a cop-out at all, Pat, to say stock equal. I think it very much depends on where you had his stock personally. He was one of those guys who people were putting the stock too high, and that's not on him, right? When people are talking about him as the sleeper MVP candidate before the season, when people are talking about the Green Bay Packers as the darling Super Bowl pick for everybody across the media landscape here, that's the people who should be saying stock down, but those are the people who are double downing on who he is and what he's going to be for the rest of the season. I think he's perfectly stock equal. This is the exact arc that you'd expect for a guy who's, taken a while to get going here, didn't start for 3 years to start off his career, and then had half of a really good year. Like he had half of a really good year, and everybody wanted to put him on the top of the pedestal, and that was wrong. So I'm the guy who has been tearing him down from that pedestal all year long, or I should say all preseason long, not understanding the love fest for Jordan Love. And now me admitting before the season, he's not a bust. I thought he was a bust. I thought he was going to suck. If we're talking about stock from, where he was at the beginning of last year, he's way up for me, but I've been past that. We've been over that. He's stock equal. He is doing more than enough week in, week out to prove he's a worthy quarterback, to prove he's a guy who can go out there and win a game against anybody. But there's too many mistakes. There's too many risks. And frankly, he's a quarterback that I've started to really appreciate watching when you're stuck watching Jets and Giants football and guys not willing to push the ball down the field, right? Like you want to see guys take these risks. And yeah, the turnovers come a little bit. And you look at the quote bad throw percentage that you could find on Pro Football Reference. It's perfectly, segued into who CJ Stroud is last year and this year as well, right? CJ Stroud last year couldn't throw an interception to save his life. This year, not as lucky, right? Like he's still chucking for, top 5 yardage in the league, but he's thrown a couple more picks. Jordan Love, the same exact concept here, with his 11 picks already in just 10 games played so far this year. So there's ups and downs, but it's not a cop-out. Stock equal. This is a guy who you should be excited to watch. This is a guy who can go out and win any given Sunday against any team, but you can't trust him at all with any of these top 5 guys. Like, in my opinion, he's still not touching a Herbert. He's not touching a Jalen Hurts. that gap in that area where we wanted to insert CJ Stroud, we wanted to insert Jordan Love into the conversation. I know Dak Prescott's obviously hurt and wasn't very good this year, but before the season, we wanted to put those guys into that category, and I just can't do that yet. So I'm saying stock equal. He's an above average quarterback, but that's all he is right now. And I don't know, does anyone have anything to add on CJ Stroud on that front, or did we kind of capture them? Are they kind of similar in that way right now, where they're second-year starters and they're still playing through some growing pains? Do we have any thoughts on CJ Stroud there?
I've been very disappointed by him. I would say a huge stock down. I think he's
Agreed.
he's not on the same level as Jordan Love this year. And he's had 3 games where he hasn't thrown a touchdown pass. And he's also had, 9 games with 1 or fewer touchdown passes. And I understand Nico Collins was hurt and Stephon Diggs was hurt. Like, he did all this last year without Stephon Diggs, right? And yeah, again, Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs being hurt at the same time doesn't help. But, that offensive line is not very good. I think he's taken the second most sacks in the NFL this year, CJ Stroud. But at the same time, his decision-making has been really, really poor. And it just doesn't feel like he has that aura about him. Last year was, wow, this kid is going to drive down the field. He will beat us if you give him the ball with 2 minutes and a timeout or 2 minutes and no timeouts. He's going to do it. I don't get that same feel at all this year from CJ. It looks like it is a sophomore slump. It's felt like it's a sophomore slump. He's been reckless with the football too. Not, again, they were able to beat Jacksonville where he struggled again, struggling to throw the ball down the field and hit his receivers. And before that, 2 picks against Tennessee in a game they had no business losing. An interception against Dallas where he didn't look good. And even then, they won the game just because the Cowboys were so damn bad. 2 picks against Detroit and that loss against the Lions. He's played uninspiring football, and he's not a guy that has elevated the team around him, especially when they needed him with the injuries to his receivers.
He's definitely a stock down, and I know they've done enough. They're they're almost definitely going to win the South, right? You could almost put that there, but it's not been the season you expected from him. And whether it's fair or not, the expectation off last season was he's at least going to repeat this success. I think he was the guy that his stock probably rose as much as anyone during the offseason, as we would have seen at least out of the quarterback. And he hasn't lived up to that bill. He's going to make the playoffs. Nobody's going to want to back him. They're going to be a dog almost no matter who they play. And it's going to be deserved because he's just been okay. He just hasn't been what you'd expect. He might be a good buy low guy right now because I do think that his stock might rise again come end of the year or next year. But as of right now, as we sit today, his stock has to be down. He's been overall disappointing compared to what, again, fair or not fair, what the expectation was. He hasn't quite lived up to them yet.
Yeah, he's a guy you're not going to give up on next year. Obviously, you're expecting that revitalization of what he's been doing. But yeah, right now it's down, and that's fair. I guess I shouldn't have lumped him and Love together so simply. I just felt like that Love got a little out of control and put them closer to an equal playing ground. But you're right, Love has been better this year as well. All right, let's do a 2-for-1. Let's start rapid firing these a little bit more swiftly here. Can we do a 2-for-1 on the NFC West quarterbacks of Geno Smith and Kyler Murray? Do we have a stock decision on Geno and Kyler? I can go first if you guys want a second here.
Take it.
It's a really tough one, right? So to me, Kyler Murray's stock is up, obviously, because it was like an injury situation. But if you kind of look past what he did last year, missing half the year and going back to what he was before the injury here, I'm going to go ahead and say stock equal. And what I'm going to say with Kyler Murray is people are now being shocked that he's good at football. And I think the amnesia of sports fans comes into play again because people forgot that he was very good before he got injured. Obviously, with some of his downfalls, he's not a perfect quarterback. But I'm saying stock equal on Kyler Murray. And I'm going to go with another stock equal on Geno Smith because guess what? He is exactly who Geno Smith is. And that's why I paired these two guys together. I think we always want them to be something that they're not. We want Geno Smith to go out there and sling the ball over the yard and go out of control and, hit all of his weapons for, 4 touchdowns a game. It's just not who he is. He's third in the league in yards, but he's only thrown 13 touchdowns this year, guys. And you could probably argue he's a stock down with the 12 interceptions, but this is Geno Smith. He's a guy who moves the ball with consistency. He takes his chances. He has good weapons, and he is as consistently inconsistent not as Jameis Winston, but as a decent quarterback in this league. If before the league I ranked Geno Smith as the 12th quarterback in the league, he might damn well be 12th again. Like, to me, it's just who he is. And Kyler Murray, it's almost a stock up, stock equal, because I think people forgot how talented he was and that he can run a good offense. So it's kind of a stock up for Kyler, but I'm calling it stock equal because I think he was being forgotten a little bit as this playmaker and dynamic offensive leader that he's kind of always been prior to the injury.
Geno's probably, for me personally, a slight riser because he's formidable, and I think that's more than I even expected out of him. Like, he's a guy that can win you football games and get you in the playoffs, and I think that's more than I ever thought out of him. Kyler, I think, is relatively even because we're getting into the cold months of December, and this is typically when it starts to kind of fall off the cliff for them, and the last couple games haven't looked great. And when the run game doesn't look very good, they don't look all that good. Marvin Harrison not having a better, more explosive, at least yardage-wise, year probably says a little bit about Kyler, although the tight end, Trey McBride, has been unbelievable. So he's pretty much equal. Geno's relatively equal, slight uptick. Good to group them together. You might be able to group the NFC West together. That's a crapshoot.
I will actually say stock down on Geno. I think he has regressed, not only from 2 years ago, right, where they wrote me off and he didn't write back with the 30 touchdowns and 4,200 yards in 2022. Last year, didn't throw nearly as many touchdowns, but also threw less interceptions, was kind of a more composed, calm Geno, but you also didn't get those, you didn't get those insane performances that we had about him 2 years ago. But I don't know. I'd like to give him a little bit more time, working with Ryan Grubb as the offensive coordinator in the Seahawks offense at times. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to get a gauge on that entire division, let alone each team within the division. But I know that Geno has he threw him out of a couple of games this year, right? A couple of games that they should have won. It just feels like Geno, whereas 2 years ago, again, I don't know if we'll ever get that from Geno again. Maybe that's an unfair expectation for me to place on him, that he can be as good as he was 2 years ago. But yeah, again, he's thrown 12 picks. We're in week 14. Throws almost an interception a game. And, it's either an interception, it's no interceptions, or it's 2 or 3. He's had 3 games this year with multiple interceptions. He hasn't lost a fumble, incredibly, somehow this year.
It feels like he almost does every week.
It feels like anytime I see the pocket collapsing around Geno, I think the football is going to be on the ground. I mean, he's fumbled it a handful of times. He hasn't lost one, though, this year. I don't know. I just don't think, again, for a team that has DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who has taken a massive step forward this year, Lockett and Kenny Walker, it feels like they should be doing a little bit better than basically being a 16th, 17th best offense in the league. And, Geno's numbers kind of reflect that. So I don't know. I guess I expected him. Like you said, if you thought he was 12th this year, he's probably been closer to 15 to 18 range in terms of best quarterbacks this year. So I think slight stock down. I agree with Kyler. Just coming back from the injury, he's been good. Arizona was red hot, going into their bye week. But, Kyler, for the most part, has been what we've seen Kyler Murray be for most of his career. And, that connection with Marvin Harrison Jr. still needs to get better. It's not like it was the first game of the year or the first 2 games before he popped off, but they've got a lot of offensive weapons, him and Trey McBride especially. It feels like Kyler can be doing a little bit more. But, again, obviously it's stock up coming back from the injury, and right now they're in playoff contention.
All right, let's pair 2 more guys together, and these guys are just always going to be linked at the hip a little bit because of the draft and because of their history coming into the first 2 years or so into the league. Now they've been around. One guy, obviously, with tons of specific injuries that have made it a little bit more tricky, but let's get Justin Herbert and Tua Tagovailoa into the conversation here. Are these 2 guys? Where are they at? Well, I don't even want to lead you guys on here. Where are they at? Because Herbert feels like a pretty easy answer. Tua is a very complicated answer, but I think I know mine. So go ahead.
Tua is hard to figure. I mean, obviously they looked horrible without him and much better with him, but is that an indictment on Tua or the backup quarterback situation? Is it an indictment on McDaniel? I don't know, but I know one thing: when the weather gets cold, they still can't play football, and whether that's Tua's fault, McDaniels, or the rest of the football team, I'm relatively consistent when I talk about what matters most to me, and that's being able to win these games. Right, the stats matter in some ways, but being able to win football teams and keep your team and playing in meaningful, contentious type games matters a lot. So, Tua's stock, I don't know, slightly decreased. I don't think you need to spend too much time. For me personally, it's about the same. Justin Herbert's a high riser for me because they're winning football games, and he's proving that it doesn't just have to be on his arm. And with Harbaugh with him, they can do it in multiple ways, but he's still making the big plays. He takes the necessary risks. He's got the rocket arm and all the intangible things. Now, if you're backing it with winning, you're backing that Instagram type quarterback with winning football. Now your stock is on the rise for me.
I'm going to say stock up for both. Stock up for Herbert, and despite I don't know if we'll ever see the Herbert playing under Brandon Staley where it was, we see him throw for 300 yards a game, but we also see him throw an interception or lose a fumble a game. It has been ultra conservative, and it has worked. He's got one pick. He's turned the ball over 3 times this year. 3 times in 12 games. He has been excellent with ball security, but again, it's like, okay, 168 yards with no touchdowns, and the Chargers win by 10 because they run the shit out of the football, and that's what Jim Harbaugh does, and the defense has played great. So, I want to see him push, rocket 30-yard passes through the air to Quentin Johnston if he could catch him, to Josh Palmer, to McConkey. But it just, for whatever reason, they don't push the ball down the field that much. And I need to see them do that in order to think that the Chargers have a chance of actually doing anything in the playoffs this year. I need to see, because again, Harbaugh is a great coach. He's proved that that defense has been one of the worst in the NFL the last couple of years when Staley was there. And now Jim Harbaugh gets here, and they're one of the best defenses in the NFL this year. Number one, I think in a lot of metrics, top 5 in basically every metric and every statistical category. But if they're going to win a playoff game in the AFC, if they're going to beat the Ravens, if they're going to go up first matchup, if they're going to beat Houston, which seems very plausible, and then if they're going to go in the divisional round and beat Buffalo, beat Kansas City, Herbert has to be the top 5 quarterback that I still think he has potential to be. You got to start pushing the ball down the field. You got to start, maybe taking some risks at the expense of maybe an interception, because as vanilla as they are, their defense has kept them in games. They've played a weak schedule. You can't expect your defense, we saw them give up a bunch of points to Cincinnati, but the Bengals defense is just so goddamn bad that even then they were able to win. He wasn't very good on Sunday against Atlanta, and Kirk Cousins threw 4 picks, and the Chargers defense won them that game. He wasn't very good against Baltimore, and they were fortunate to cover a teaser for me, a same-game parlay. But, for the most part, they got outplayed most of that game against Baltimore. So slight stock up for Herbert. Again, Cody, like you said, they're playing winning football. He's not turning the ball over. 2 is also a stock up for me. Since he's come back, the Dolphins have been a top 3 offense in the National Football League. And he has also limited the turnovers. He turned it over 19 times last year in 17 games. He's turned it over 5 times so far in 8 games this year. So I think he has taken a lot better care of the football. He's as accurate as he's ever been. But like you said, when the weather's cold, good luck counting on them to win a game.
I agree with you, Pat. And again, it comes back to this idea of us always looking at the quarterback stats and saying, oh, these stats are really good, but they're a 500 team, or they're below 500. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're in the playoffs, so they're good. The outside forces change the narrative on these conversations tremendously, right? The Chargers couldn't get out of their own way under Staley. Their defense were always underperforming. And now Pat just mentioned number 1 in points allowed, top 5 or top 6 in expected points added from a defensive perspective. Now they're playing good. So I feel like all the people who were so afraid for some reason to say Justin Herbert was a talented and good quarterback, they're able to say it now. And that's where it comes down to. When it comes to stock prices in the world of business, it's not always how good a company is. It's how good it's perceived in the market and how it's being sold in all these different facets. He's now being sold as a top tier stock. And that's what he has probably always deserved. But all these outside forces were pushing that stock price down. So finally, he has a good defense. He has a good run game. He has a good coach. He still doesn't have good weapons, but his stock price is flying high. And then on the Tua front, so I agree, stock up for Herbert. On the Tua front, It was like in Succession when I was about to say Brian Cox. That's his name in real life. Why can't I think of the character's name? The main Logan
Roy.
Logan Roy.
Thank you for the Logan part.
Goddamn there. Yeah, Logan Roy, when he like leaves, the stock price dies, even though he's a senile old man. It's not about the reality sometimes. It's about all the other stuff that's happening when he's not there. And senile may be a bad thing to, put next to his name there with all the injuries that he's had. However, when he returns and plays better than he was before the injury, it's incredible to watch. Like, this offense is cooking, and I totally hear what you're saying about the cold weather. I got burned on Thanksgiving night betting on the Dolphins in Green Bay. I was just hoping for that little flash in the pan of that offense continuing to be impressive. But stock up for Tua. If some of it's up because of how bad they were in his absence, so be it. They need him to play good quarterback for them to be remotely relevant for now and the foreseeable future. So Herbert up, Tua up, outside forces or not. I think these guys are well-respected quarterbacks where in years past, there was always conversations. Who are they? They're overrated. They're social media quarterbacks, whatever the hell that even freaking means. I always hated that with Justin Herbert. He's been impressive since the rookie year. He's just as impressive now. His stats are super different in a good way. Obviously, you're hoping for more statistical output from Herbert, but nonetheless, I digress. All right. Just one or two more here for you guys. And this one's an interesting one. Jalen Hurts, whose stock has gone all the way up to MVP conversations, all the way down to he's washed and he's losing a step, to now they're 10-2. Their defense has obviously been one of the best in the league. But Jalen Hurts leading the 10-2 Eagles, who look like a juggernaut again. Where is his stock price at?
It's one of the most equal stock prices I've ever seen. It hasn't moved. The team is really, really good around him. He's fine, but I still believe that if you make him a drop back passer and they're playing from a deficit, that I don't trust that he can just drop back and beat you and beat you and beat you consistently. But they're so good that it might not matter, and he hasn't really had to be put into that spot too much of late. So for me, dead even.
I agree with Cody. I agree, and I think Saquon Barkley might be saving him from going stock down, although it's kind of tough to go stock down when you look last year and he turned the ball over 20 times. He threw 15 picks, and of course that season melted down in epic fashion. Yes, the defense was bad, but Jalen Hurts really didn't deserve to be scapegoated, or I guess the opposite of scapegoated. You know, he wasn't safe from criticism because he played into all those troubles and that gigantic slide to end the year as well. He was not very good. I don't think he's been great this year. I don't think he's been elite. I don't think I've watched a game this year, a single Eagles game, and I'm like, damn, Hurts is winning them this football game. No, it's been Saquon. It's been Saquon, and it's been that incredible offensive line that even after losing one of the best centers of all time, they're still fantastic. They still push other teams off the line of scrimmage. But yeah, I mean, Hurts has drastically reduced the turnovers. You know, he had, like I said, 20 last year. He's got 9 so far through 12 games. He's thrown 1/3 of the picks, and it feels like in the red zone, he hasn't made the same amount of mistakes he made last year. But again, haven't gotten the feeling that, like, damn, Jalen Hurts is winning the Eagles games. He is, like, without him, they'd be lost. No, they'd probably be maybe in just a slightly worse situation with a quarterback that's a lesser caliber than him. So I agree with Cody, dead even.
I think the outside part that is super important for Jalen Hurts has been A.J. Brown. They're 9-0 with him playing. 9-0. They're 1-2 with him when he was out, when he was injured earlier in the year. And when he doesn't play, they're scoring 21, 15, and 16 points, and they haven't scored under 20 when A.J. Brown's in the lineup. So for all that Saquon has been doing, that safety blanket of A.J. Brown just putting up 116, 89, 84. He had the one weird game against Jacksonville. They won. He only had 36, 109, 65, 109, 66. He's just been everything and more that you could ask for from a receiver perspective that Jalen Hurts needs desperately, right? Devontae Smith has been disappointing. The rest of their receivers have been pretty meh, to say the least. But A.J. Brown being active and healthy is enormous for Jalen Hurts. I think he gets a stock up, in my opinion, just because he's the leader of a very dynamic offense. But yeah, you have to give some of that stock price to Jalen Hurts there as well. Cody, you're smirking. Are you laughing about something that we talked about there, or something different?
Just a text message that came in made me laugh.
Ah, okay. Unrelated then. All right.
Sort of.
Oh, okay. Anyways, last one here, and this one's an interesting one. I want to talk about Caleb Williams quickly. Because I think if we're talking about Bo Nix, we're talking about a stock up. If we're talking about Jaden Daniels, the stock is still so up from that beginning that even if it's tapered off a bit, it's still up. I think we could agree on that, correct? Like Bo Nix, stock up. Jaden Daniels, not as up as it was 4 weeks ago, but still pretty damn up for Daniels and the Commanders. Caleb Williams, however, has had much more of a roller coaster rookie season. The most sacked quarterback in the league by a wide margin. He has 8 more than the person with the second most. He's thrown only 5 interceptions, but it feels like a roller coaster ride every given Sunday with Caleb Williams. So of the rookie quarterbacks, I think he's the most confusing to grade at this point. So where is Caleb Williams' stock price going? Obviously, maybe not looking at just the next 4 weeks.
I would say in the last 5 weeks, it's gone up in a big way. He hasn't turned the football over in the last 5 weeks, but also what I saw in the first 6-7 weeks of the season was a rookie quarterback that shouldn't have been number 1 overall, that I don't think ultimately is going to ever be a great elite quarterback. And I'm going to stick by that until I've seen otherwise. But the last 5 games, he's been very good. He has not turned the ball over at all. His decision-making has been good. The way he uses his legs, it looks like Mahomes, where he'll go, and that's why I see the Mahomes comps, right, with the legs, where he kind of weaves in and out. Like he's always looking for that little flip pass, that little shovel pass, that little dump-off pass at the last second, buying as much time as he can with his legs. He's done a great job with that the last couple of games and not making boneheaded decisions, not throwing into double traffic, not holding on to the ball too much. I think he has gotten a better sense of the pocket. Like, hey, I need to get the hell out of here now. He's still, I forget if it was against Detroit or against Minnesota. He took a horrendous sack, though, still on like a 3rd and medium where they're in field goal range. And he backs up, and it's like, dude, get rid of the goddamn football or throw it, like you got to do something here. And he ends up taking a sack that knocked him out of field goal range. I forget if that was against Minnesota or just this past on Thanksgiving against Detroit. But I will say this, they've already fired the offensive coordinator and the head coach this year. So he's stepped up in the last 5 weeks, and I think that's why it made it easier to move on from Matt Eberflus. But then again, he's played his best football here the last couple of weeks, and they've still lost 6 in a row. So something's not adding up. He's not losing them games anymore, but at this point, he's not doing a whole lot to win them games. And as great as he was in the second half against Detroit, they couldn't get anything going offensively in the first half. So I would say stock up from the last 5 games where he hasn't turned the ball over. But overall, this has not been the year that Caleb Williams or Bears fans had envisioned. Yes, they were 4-2. They've lost 6 in a row, and you fired your head coach and your OC. It's been a pretty brutal year.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so tough to judge him. They're so dysfunctional, and we know dysfunction around here in New York. They're so dysfunctional over there. I mean, just Thanksgiving on the brightest stage with everybody watching, and Matt Eberflus doesn't call that timeout. It was just like a perfect ending to his tenure there with the Bears, and so bad that they did something that they've never done in their franchise's history, their 100-plus year franchise history, which is fire a coach midseason. That's how bad he was. The OC was awful, and just from the OC getting fired and moving on from him, you already saw a rise in Caleb Williams. I know from DJ Moore as a fantasy owner of his that he all of a sudden is relevant again. The offense moves the ball much better. So he's kind of tough to figure. And I think if you bought the stock before any firings happened, you got it at the perfect time. And now I'm probably just monitoring because ultimately he plays for the Bears and it's hard to trust that they're going to make the moves around him to ultimately have him find more success.
Yeah, again, it's really, really dependent on where you bought this stock. Like I bought this stock before the season started, so it might just be stock equal at best for me, right? At best, where he's gotten back to even after the firings and after kind of upgrading his play a little bit here. But if you bought the stock at any other point in the season, then yeah, you probably are up, right? Like if you bought the stock after a couple bad weeks, then yeah, you're definitely up actually. But if you're grading him on the preseason hype, I understand why you're still a little bit trepidatious. I, for one, am still pro Caleb Williams. I am still seeing enough out of what he does on the football field every week where it is so much the outside forces for him. It was really easy for us to say because of a Roma Dunze draft selection and Keenan Allen and DJ Moore to be like, wow, what an amazing situation for this rookie quarterback. And then you saw him with defensive lines in his butt every single game, up his asshole every game, D-lines all over him. And now I know what people are saying about how he feels about that, because people make comments about Caleb Williams that I also don't like, about his nails painted and whatnot. But here we are after 13 weeks of Caleb Williams playing football, and this guy's tough, man. This guy's tough. This guy makes good throws. This guy has a boatload of talent, and I want to believe it so bad, but at the end of the day, the outside forces are going to hold that stock price down. So if you bought it like me early, you're equal at best, and you're holding it on with diamond hands. If you bought it after a few weeks of him looking terrible, you're feeling pretty good. I think you got to feel good from a trajectory standpoint. Jaden Daniels started off on a rocket ship and now has settled down a little bit, had some better games the last week or two. Bo Nix, slow and steady, building up that stock. Caleb Williams was all the way up, all the way down, and now he might be where he has been supposed to be all along. So I'm still holding on to my Caleb Williams stock with diamond hands. I have faith in the talent. I have faith in the toughness. I think he's a top-notch NFL quarterback in the future.
But you said he's got who in his butt? Who's in his ass?
Dude, have you watched any Bears games? There's people up in there, left and right.
Hey, whatever works.
It's true, though. Listen, and I got to say, I'll say this too, because for me, part of it has to, and it was the same thing with Jared McCain. Let's be real here. This is a world of sports that's very masculine. And people want to hate on Caleb Williams, and people want to hate on Jared McCain because of who they are and what they do off the field, or what they do with their fingernails on the court or on the field. To me, I don't care. It is a different freaking world. And if you watch college football, you are seeing more and more players express themselves in a multitude of ways. And you're going to see more and more players who are just like a Caleb Williams and a Jared McCain, who do all this other stuff that your old school uncle football fan just doesn't get. And frankly, I don't care. I watch Caleb Williams week in, week out get smoked by opposing defenses and bounce up and still try to make the next play. I'm all for it. And maybe that's me overcompensating for hate that I think is dumb. And I'll admit that.
Not me, Pete. I'm traditional, old school, manly man. I hate my quarterback because he freaking sucks. That's why I hate him.
Do you guys understand where I'm coming from with that point, though, with that sentiment? Some of the rhetoric that's being spewed about some certain players.
If you can play, you can play. Go ball out.
That's what I'm saying.
And they both do.
Yeah. And listen, and he has a lot to prove still, like a ton. But end of the day, I feel like you watch him and you at least get some confidence that he belongs. Whereas for a couple weeks there, it was like, holy smokes, is this the worst ever grading that NFL scouts have ever done? Right? Like, that's how bad it looked for the first couple weeks for Caleb Williams. That's how bad it was. So that's all we got. Any other thoughts? Any other quarterbacks that we didn't bring up that you're surprised we didn't bring up? I feel like I've tried to bring ones up that were in question.
Only one I thought of is Brock Purdy, but it's just the NFC West. So
and now it feels weird to even grade him with where the Niners are. And That's why I left him off. I think earlier in the year we would have had a good conversation on what Purdy has done with and without the players he was supposed to have. But now it's like, what are we doing? The Niners, half their team is not playing. Even their handcuff running back is hurt now too. That's it. All right. Well, that's all we got. Some Knicks talk, some NFL talk. Patty Boyle, any last words?
I'm on the Fan this Saturday, December 7th, approximately 3 p.m. after Rutgers basketball. They're playing Ohio State, 3 to 7:45. And then check out Gridiron Game Day every single Sunday. You're stepping out of the house. You don't want to miss a single action, a minute of red zone. You don't want to miss what's going on with your fantasy team, with your bets. Try to get all of that covered for you in an exciting way every Sunday, 8 hours, Gridiron Game Day, Odyssey app, Infinity Sports Network. How you doing?
I know Cody and I definitely frequent flyer the Infinity Sports Network Gridiron Game Day. Pat, what's been the most interesting part of doing that job? Because I don't think people understand the massive undertaking it is to run that show.
Yeah.
What's been the most interesting part to you?
The witching hour is always leaving me feeling like my brain is fried because, it's easy when Hansen can go triple box and you're seeing one red zone play, then the next red zone play, then the next. But you can't see it on the radio. So we use we call them our stringers, our correspondents, where we zip out to that stadium for a live listen in. You hear the crowd noise in the background. They basically do quasi play-by-play, and then I fill in the blanks there, then go to the next game and go to the next game. And it's, trying to do that for 4 or 5 games when it's 4 or 5 crazy finishes like it was 2 weeks ago on the radio is tough. And then also the live, the post-game interviews, where they go into the locker room, they grab a player. Hey, you want to talk? We have a radio hit for you if you're interested. So like 2 weeks ago, we had Fred Warner, DeMar Hamlin back-to-back. That was great. Had T. Higgins on, have gotten Cooper Kupp on. So like talking to those guys has been like a, pinch me moment. That's been cool.
I always think that too when I'm listening to you do the show, because it's like Scott Hansen also has the luxury of cutting to the game broadcast, right? So Kevin Harlan or Ian Eagle or whoever the broadcaster might be has the chance to kind of carry that moment on Red Zone. And you don't have the luxury to cut to Bob Papa, right? Like you have to go to the stringers who they're not doing play-by-play. They're giving updates of just what happened. But now you're in the studio seeing what happened. And now you have to recap it all. It's wild that you're pulling it off with the grace that you do.
I appreciate that, Pete. Thank you, babe.
Hey, man. Least we can do around these parts, right? How you doing? How you been? All right, Subway Sports Talk. That's all we got. Appreciate Cody. Appreciate Pat. We'll be back with picks. Also, we probably should have shouted this out earlier in the podcast. Pat Boyle, 3-0. Cody O'Connor, 3-0. Mark Shanlugan, 3-0. P. Kennedy, 1-2. Oh my goodness, man.
10-2 week. That's all I remember.
10-2 week for the whole crew. I didn't do the math on where we are overall, but we're pretty damn close to 500 as a unit now, if I'm not mistaken. If not over. Cody, what are you, freaking 7 games over?
Yeah, 23-16. Take a snapshot now because it's all going to hell.
Golly.
I'm 20-18-1, and I think Shen is 1 game under. So between me and him, we should be 1 game over. Cody's 7 games over, so that puts us 8 over, and then whatever your record is, fill in the blanks.
18-20-1.
So we should be like a solid 6 games above.
Look at us.
We'd be a shoo-in for the NFC West playoff contention right now.
All right, well, stay tuned for those picks at Subway Sports Talk on social media. We'll be back with more stuff. As always. We'll be back. That's it. Subway Sports Talk. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.